People with jobs that require you to go into strangers' houses. What is the weirdest thing you've encountered? A goat in the living room. The mother came down and shooed it outside. Not me, but my dad, who can tell the story much better than I can. He was once repairing a furnace in the basement of one of his clients' homes. Nobody was home when suddenly he heard us scurrying behind him. But when he looked, nothing was there. This went on several times before he realized the noise was coming from behind a couch. Slowly, he began towards it. As he bent down, a skunk popped out from its hiding spot and met him face to face. Turns out he was a pet. I used to help my dad, who was a real estate appraiser. We went into this one house that was in the mountains. It was vacant. One room looked like it had black carpeting. When we looked closer, we found out the floor was covered in dead flies. A neighbor called the police after noticing the mail piling up outside of a neighbor's house. Never ever a good sign. I get the check the welfare call and go with a backup car. No answer at the door, so we try to look through all the first floor windows when my partner spots a foot in the hallway. We forced entry and found the elderly female barely alive. She had fallen 2 days earlier and had a broken hip. Fire rescue came and got her to the hospital in time. I know, not the weirdest thing finding her. We had to grab all the prescription medicine we could find to take to the hospital. It was then that we found her mummified husband sitting in the bedroom chair. Coroner said he had been there about 6 months. You know how it is, though. Sometimes you just keep putting these little chores off and bam. Next thing you know, 6 months has passed. Maybe not the weirdest, but the funniest was a framed and laminated poster for the movie 3 Men and a Baby in the master bedroom. I was 20 years old working as an internet installer, just over 10 years ago. A cute girl a little older than me ordered service, so while I was at her house surveying, both flirting, I told her I had to trace some lines down. It was a studio type mill suite she was renting behind a house as she was in college. Started tracing lines and had to look behind her bed. It was just a mountain of used tampons. He had been shoving them under and behind her bed. The rest of the house was relatively clean. Also lots and lots of hoarders. Carpeted kitchen. I'm an EMT, so I've seen lots of hoarders, human and animal waste, etc. But the most aggravating day was when my partner and I got fleas from this dude's house. Our ambulance was swarming with fleas. Her and I were covered in fleas. We could see them jumping around, there were so many. We had to mark out of service to decontaminate the truck and ourselves. It was awful and itchy. When I was a caregiver, I was absolutely flabbergasted when I walked into a home where there was dog everywhere. No pads, no newspaper, etc. Just dog everywhere. Of all kinds. Dried, fresh, broken into bits, whole pieces. There was a capable adult in the household who could have let the dog out. I had to bite my tongue every time I went there and was told to pick it up, because I so badly wanted to go, what in the absolute is wrong with you motherers? How do you live like this when I'm not here? I'm gonna go wholesome here. My brother was an appliance repairman. He said he never knew who was gonna answer the door. Like others have said, naked people, hungover people, the whole thing. His favorite would be when the toddlers would answer the door. Mama standing behind them. He said sometimes they would be a dragon or a mermaid, or one of the Disney princesses. But the best was the ones you could tell had dressed themselves. Rain boots and bathing suits and a cape and a crown. The parents were always so thankful that he just played along with the kids. Your Majesty, thank you for answering the door. Is your mother here? EMT. But this is from a colleague of mine. He and his partner show up to the scene of a frequent flyer. The caller's an old lady who was lonely and often called just to talk. Well, this time they show up. Walk in. And she's super distressed. Ask what's wrong. She says her cat, Skittles, died earlier that day. They say they're so sorry that happened. He says look. Walks over to the freezer. And pulls out MR. Skittle frozen into a block of ice. My friend says they had just been there the other day. And the cat hadn't seemed sick then. Not me. But my so used to work for Comcast as an installer and electrician many years ago. He has lots of odd, funny, alarming stories. My favorite is when he was in the basement of an old house running some wires. He couldn't find the pull for the lights, so he was using a small flashlight to look around. So he's looking around and catches eyes in the dark with his flashlight. Goes back and realizes there's many eyes watching him in the dark. As soon as he realizes, he gets creeped out and starts to head for the stairs. Then something starts screaming, which makes him scream. Then the homeowner comes down, turns on the lights and apologizes for not telling him about the herd of goats that live in the dark basement. Apparently they are easily startled. He said there were probably a dozen of them down there. Piles and piles of giant and opened Happy Meal toys. When asked, they said the kids won't let them throw them away. I work as a mobile computer repair service guy. Went into a house to work on a laptop. And they happened to be my next door neighbors. House had an animal smell. People with pets usually do not notice. But this was different. As I sat down to work on the laptop, I heard a loud screech. And a pygmy marmoset jumped from a cabinet onto my head, pulling my hair violently. I then watched as an albino skunk, 3 house cats, 2 small dogs, and various large birds, a minor African grey, and what I think was some kind of guinea fowl, all appeared from various rooms and furnishings. All the animals were kind of friendly, there was no biting. But the sheer volume of animals in that tiny space was crazy. A few weeks later, the Department of Fish and Wildlife and US Customs raided their house. I found out later my neighbor smuggled rare animals and had several aquariums full of rare poisonous snakes. I believe you met Ace Ventura. I'm a pizza delivery driver, so I'm not really going into houses. But this one woman did answer the door wearing some sort of thigh-length nightgown thing and nothing else. Okay. Whatever. She was covered just fine. Except when she turned around and bent over to get her money, twice. For some reason, and her garment had holes worn out of the fabric directly over both butt cheeks. So you could clearly see her entire ass. These holes were perfectly aligned. One on each cheek, with a little strip of fabric between them. But they honestly looked worn away. Not cut or anything. Had she been standing straight, they would have fallen below cheek level. They only lined up once she bent over. Twice. I get that strange women do weird like this to pizza guys sometimes. But I'm not a guy. I'm a woman. Probably about her age. And I've delivered to her several times before. Maybe she was expecting one of my male co-workers or something. I do IT work on my own. I go into a lot of private homes. Hoarders are rare, but it happens. Sad are some older people who are just lonely. Their PC issues are minor, but I'm someone to chat with for a while. One of my regulars is a couple in their late 80s. The old guy always wants me to play checkers with him. If I have the time, I play a few games. He always wins and brags like he won the Super Bowl. One day his wife called in a panic. She said Joe fell in the bathroom and can't get up. I suggest 911. But she says he's okay. Just can't get up. So I go over. About 10 minutes. Joe is on the bathroom floor in his underwear, flat on his back. I got him into his wheelchair. His first words were, "Got time for a few games of checkers?" Whole living room was set up like a strip club with a stage and stripper pole. Used to babysit for a family. Great family. Good kids. But I swear they had no organization to their home. Piles of clothes wherever they could fit. Toys scattered everywhere. When I tried to clean one time, I was told by them all to not worry. Stacks of papers and what seemed to be important documents. And the house appeared to be perpetually in the middle of construction. I could forgive all of that. All of that. If they just put the food in their kitchen away. Who leaves milk out all day? I just want to say that I've been working as a pizza guy for almost 3 years and I'm terrified of these stories while also wanting something like these to happen to me just so I can be able to tell the story. The best I can do is that one time the guy didn't have enough cash so he had to call in his card number to the restaurant. But he was in the middle of a game of Rocket League. So he asked me if I played that game and I did, so I subbed in for him and got the game winning save and goal as he was calling the restaurant, giving me a generous tip for my efforts. When I was walking out, the guy put his headset back on and said yo. That was the pizza guide to his friends. Worked a maintenance job for a landlord who owned hundreds of properties in a small city. I found a total of 3 dead bodies in the short time I worked for him. First one was the worst. Neighbors complained of smell. Unable to contact the tenant. So I get sent out. I end up finding dude dead on his couch with the TV still on. The smell was bad. But it gets worse. I call the cops. They in turn call an ambulance to transport. Dead guy is a huge dude. Probably 450 pounds easily. They get his body strapped to the cart and try to wheel him out. But there is no way he is fitting out the door without some maneuvering. It's me. 2 cops. And 2 M's trying to turn and pivot this lump of rotting carcass through the door frame. We get him about 3/4 of the way out and something slips. Big boy just kinda pops. It was February and still kinda chilly. But the odor and the river of nasty running down the porch was too much for what I was getting paid. Ended up having to hire a special company to handle the cleanup. 5 of the same DLDO vibrator type thing. 1 opened and clearly used. The rest still in the sealed packaging. I guess when you find one you like, you stock up. This was when I was about 10 or 12 and my neighbors were paying me to mow their lawn and feed their cats while they were away on vacation. I don't have a job that requires me to go to strangers' home. But a few years ago an HVAC guy came to our house to check the heat pump. When he got here I was on the back deck in my wheelchair tossing hot dogs out to at least 2 dozen skunks that came here every day for dinner. He started laughing and said he'd never forget making a house call here. From then on if we ever had to have him come here I just say I'm the lady who feeds skunks and he knows exactly who I am. I live way out in the woods. Skunks have such a hard, difficult, and very short life. And if they want to come around and get a little something to eat, I'm going to feed them. Not exactly the same, but I'm an online notary so people conduct video calls from their home all the time. I cannot tell you how many times people have their smoke detectors chirping in the background. It drives me crazy and I'm only on a call with them for 10-40 minutes most of the time. How do people live like this? I used to deliver waterbeds and there were a lot of colorful clients. I can't pick the weirdest. So I'll just talk about the worst. Waterbeds are expensive and my boss ran the business like a used car dealership. The kind that do the buy here pay here. So repossessions weren't uncommon. Now, nobody ever gave me a fight over it. I credit that to the fact that I looked like a scrawny kid back then and they didn't want to take it out on me when it was my boss that was the scumbag. But one lady was more passive aggressive. She contaminated the waterbed with a bacteria that eats plastic. Or at least she claimed to. The result was that my boss bought me new clothes because she called him to tell him this while I was driving back with it. If she can't keep up the payments on a waterbed, I'm doubting she has the wherewithal to acquire plastic eating bacteria. Or even know it exists. Now, I could be wrong. She could be a chemical lab technician with a bad back who had fallen on hard times. This is much more tame than the stories on this thread lol. Not for a job, but I helped a buddy get a piano from Facebook Marketplace. We walk in and it smells kind of weird. There are people sleeping on couches all over the place. We walk into a small bedroom to get this mini grand piano. Maybe a 8x8 room, and on the top bunk this teenage kid is sleeping with no pants on. We are hammering on the piano to get the legs off so we can put it in the truck with this kid sleeping next to us. While we are working on it, someone else came to get it and starts yelling because they thought they had dibs on it. We just avoided coming out till he left. Finally, as we are about to leave, I see a room in the back of the house with a ton of cages. I walk back there and they had about 45 sugar gliders in cages. They let us hold them and told us that they poop on you when you hold them. It was the oddest house I've ever been in. A statue that had clothes on. She took the short off and it was a fertility statue with the biggest erect dong ever. I'm a carpenter. And one day I was laying hardwood floor at this home. Mind you, I'm the only one there at the time. Suddenly I hear someone call out, "Hey baby." This took me completely off guard. But remembered it was only me there. So I continued to work. About 5 minutes later, "Hey baby." This time I'm a little freaked out. So I go and investigate. Open up every room in the house and nothing. Until I get to the last door in the hall. I heard the voice yet again call out, "Hey baby." This time I know for sure the voice came from behind the door. I hesitate to open the door. This is a customer's home after all. But decided to investigate anyway. I open the door. And there I see a parrot. Literally thousands of teddy bears. Whatever image you have in your head, RN, is an understatement. I was fixing some wiring and a doorbell which required me to go inside a dude's house in my hometown. The guy was about 40. Obese. Unhygienic. Super rude and generally gross. OBTW, he lived with his mom. Her room had no teddies in them, but literally everywhere else in the house were thousands. You couldn't walk in the halls and the stairs were absolutely overrun by hundreds of bears. It stunk like hell. Grossest house I have ever been in. Jesus, I'm getting flashbacks. I know my English sucks ass. Your English is great. Not weird per se, but unique. One little vial full of blood on a clear epoxy brick. This guy cured something and they gave him the last sample of contaminated blood on earth. Two funny things. I'm a handyman. I had to give a quote for a bathroom reno. As this soccer mom was walking up the stairs in her longish shirt. She was wearing no underwear. I saw it all. And she gave me a wry smile at the top of the stairs. Second. Working all day installing a new floor upstairs. Very Christian home. Daughter is prim and proper. Very polite. Very conservative clothing. Mom goes to work. Daughter reappeared completely different. Basically looking like a lady going to a heavy metal concert in the 80s. There was not much left to the imagination. Even her personality was different. Really flirty. A huge nude portrait of the owner of the house. She gave me the instructions for what needed to be done while choosing to stand right in front of the portrait. The paint was layered or something. So the nipples were raised like a ½ inch off the canvas. I once measured up. Designed and sold interior solutions for a well-known business, kitchens, bathrooms and bedrooms. This lady booked a home measure. When I arrived, she answered the door in a silk nightgown and invited me to measure her dimly lit bedroom. Candles burning os, it was like a burlesque house in there. Innocent, young and naive me measured up, and as I went to leave she asked me if I would like to stay for a coffee. In a rush to get home I said no thanks and went on my way. She never came back to do the design consultation. Looking back as an older man, she probably wanted a piece of lithe young early 20s version of myself, and I didn't even realize. In all my years working as a probation officer doing field visits, we still do not speak of the 400-pound ex offender and his equally rotund wife that didn't like wearing clothes. Used to clean windows in a snazzy neighborhood in London. At one house, Reed mansion, the husband was never home. We always dealt with his 40-something wife. Very attractive lady. Evidently a trophy wife in her time. First time I cleaned inside the house I discovered the master bedroom walls were absolutely covered with life-size or larger nude glamour shots of her in her prime. Let's say. Can't deny she looked the part. Obviously very proud of them. Made it a little awkward picking up the check from her at the end of the job. But she often wore a bit of a smirk that said she knew exactly what we were thinking. I used to have an HVAC maintenance job where we would service every unit in large downtown condo buildings. So I have been in tens of thousands of homes in a major US city. Hoarders barely even make the list. Here's some highlights. A person's bathroom who was coated on every surface with talcum baby powder so thick it made the floor slippery. A person with cigarette burn marks in the carpet surrounding both sides of their bed so that the floor was burnt black. A guy who had a commissioned pencil-drawn self-portrait of him being sexually mounted by a male lion mounted above his bed. A person who lived in a studio and the sheets on the bed where he slept and the couch cushion and floor where he sat to watch TV were coated with dirty and some black oily substance and thousands of toenail clippings. So many more. People are weird and gross. I don't do computer repair house calls anymore. But I used to. This one guy's mother lived with him. Yes. She lived with him. Not the other way around. Because she could no longer work. Which? Okay. Whatever. Disabled parents happen. But then in the course of fixing his computer I had to download some drivers. In the course of which the autocomplete in his browser's URL field made it clear he was into mother-son incest PRN. And his mother lived with him. EWW. And he was sitting right next to me the instant I realized this. I pretended not to have noticed the autocomplete while he, presumably, sat there hoping like hell that I hadn't. All the same I never did another house call for him. After that anytime he wanted me to fix his computer I had him bring it to me. And I cleared his history before doing anything if I had to open his browser. A bizarrely high number of people have Coca-Cola rooms in their house. Like. It's not rare. Region. Midwest USA. Pictures of Nazi family members in full military uniforms above the fireplace at the house of my boss's mentor and a mentally disabled vet that peed in the corners of his house. I worked for an MSP at the time. I have a pretty massive list but those stuck out to me. A house full of porcelain dolls. They ranged in size from about 3 high to the size of a 6-year-old child. I am a roofer and we worked on a house and the man was disabled and had pet cats. He let his cats in the house and through the front window you could just see the living room covered in cat absolutely everywhere. My boss went in at one stage but I refused to. The stench even from outside was horrific. I went to help a buddy of mine do some chimney work. The homeowner was an attractive woman who was a few years older. Had to go to the clean out in the basement and there was a room with a stripper pole. Couches. Lights and nude paintings everywhere of her on the walls. Great woman and she didn't give a lol. Not me. But my brother is an HVAC technician and one time he walked into a building that's like 15 minutes walking distance from my apartment to service an air conditioner only to find out it was the IKE recording studio. Kind of a weird observation of my time doing apartment and house maintenance. The people who were very poor, like on welfare and food stamps 99% of the time had immaculately clean houses. The middle class was so not filthy but not overly clean. The wealthy tenants honestly had the most disgusting living spaces. It was incredible. One wealthy, 300k year is considered wealthy to me, tenant had the most disgusting house I've ever been in. I went in for a plumbing repair at one point and I legitimately thought he was keeping a dead body in the unit. The other wealthy tenant that comes to mind is sort of a celebrity in his field. He's been on TV shows. Designs for major names in the animation industry. While his house isn't disgusting in the worst way. It's anxiety inducing to me. His 2,700 square feet house is filled floor to ceiling with toys and collectibles. You're shimmying through probably millions of dollars of toys and arcade games and memorabilia. In no particular order and nor in one house. A mummified dog. A taxidermied dog on a bed. A staircase peeling away from the wall. An entire room full of pee bottles. Plastic covers on every piece of furniture, even the wooden ones, and newspapers on the floor. Multiple posed mannequins in the living room. A random toilet in the middle of an open basement. An obese naked man eating breakfast lying on the floor in front of the TV with an absorbent pet pad under him. Approximately 300 or so China dolls on shelves. A pet pot-bellied pig that nudged me aggressively until it got scritchies. A large immaculately clean house that was empty except for one chair. One TV tray. An enormous TV. A single bed, all clearly expensive. But otherwise no decor or other furniture.